Hey, what's up guys? My name is Jager-M from SCREENCASTERS. I'm doing a different video than I normally do. I'm going to show you guys how to test whether your hands are good or not in the deck you're trying out. I'm going to show you guys what a good hand is, what a bad hand is, and it depends on each deck, each deck is different. Like right now, I'm going to show you guys Harpies. This is not a deck profile, obviously, so this isn't the final build. So of course, there'll be some tweaks in it, but I'm going to show you guys basically in your first card, opening hands, whether it's a good hand or a bad hand. And it depends on each deck. Like if you're playing an OTK deck, there's certain cards you want to see, and if you're going with an OTK deck, you're going to draw 6 cards instead of 5 in your opening hand, because you always want to go second with an OTK deck. Just common sense stuff like that. But since this is Harpies, and my build is more of a control-y build, I'm going first. I got 5 cards in hand, and what I'm looking for, basically, a play. Can I make a play with these cards? Can I do what my deck is meant to do in my first turn with these 5 cards? With Harpies, first turn, defensive, rank 4. That's the most standard, with some back row and possibly a hand trap. So what am I looking for? A way to make a play, way to establish to stun my opponent, stuff like that. It'll make more sense as you guys go through the video, so let's get started. So as you guys may have noticed, I've been shuffling my deck the whole time, so let's see what I get in my first 5 cards in Harpies. So this is what you do. You get your 5 cards out, you put them face down, and you reveal them and see what they are. So I open up with a Chandler, double Chandler, Providence, Harpist, and a Storming. So this is what you do. You gauge your hand. Can you make any plays with this? Well, I open up with a Chandler, which is good, and I got a Harpy, so I can discard her for another one and stuff like that. So what do I have in this hand? I have a play, my first turn, rank 4 XYZ. In this situation, I'd probably discard Harpist for another Harpist and go into Rafflesia. So you got Rafflesia, which is a stun factor. Just use this as an example. And 2 stun cards. And Providence, some cards you have to factor in. Like if I drew into Call to Honda, would that be a defensive card? It's a trap, but no, it's not. Providence is still alive in this situation because you do have a Harpy in hand. So these are both equally good stun factors. And you got Rafflesia. So you got 3 stuns. You got your play, and you got to set up for next turn, because Harpist, the one you discarded, not the one you used for XYZ material, but the one you discarded at the start of your turn, is going to get you another card. In this situation, you probably go with Dancer, or maybe a Harpy Lady 1 to discard with your Harpy Chandler. Drawing 2 isn't good, but since you got a play and protection, this is a very good hand. So since you got your first hand out of the way, you leave them on the pile, and they do 5 more cards. So it's pretty similar to how Asian Eyes did in his video back when he used to do actually informative videos. But this is our next 5 cards. Now, this hand is very weird. I mean, you have 2 stun cards. You have kind of a consistency card. It really depends what you draw into a duality. You opened up with a Hunting Ground and a Harpy Queen, which isn't good at all. You always want to search out the Hunting Ground. You don't want to open it unless you're going second. And this thing's whole purpose is discard to get her back. So discard to get the this from your deck. So this is already this is a pretty dead hand. I mean, unless you pod duality into your Myrmilio, so you can normal summon Myrmilio, search for a bottomless or something, and set these 2 and pass. That wouldn't be optimal. I mean, it's still a stun factor, but you have to gauge what you get from the pod duality. But in all honesty, this is just your hand. I would say this is a very subpar hand. It's not terrible, but it is a very bad hand in my opinion. So put that in the pile with his bad hands. So just keep going along and just seeing what you draw into. I mean, this is why I hate, this is one more thing I want to point out. This is why I hate Swallow's Nest. I mean, if you're playing Harpies, you don't play too many of them, and there's going to be so many times you open this and not in a Harpy. It's nice to open up the Field Spell and Hysteric Sign though, but since I don't have a Harpy, like, seriously, half my hand is basically dead. I mean, you could search out an Egotist with this, but it doesn't really change anything. You got an Egotist, a Hunting Ground, and this. I mean, you got 2 stun factors, which is a Veiler and Trap Tricks, but you have no plays. And that's what you gotta do. You gotta gauge what's more important to you in your deck. In Harpies, or, any kind of control deck. Is it more important that I stun my opponent, or that I make plays that also stun my opponent? In this deck, I'd rather have my plays, so at least I have something to attack with next turn. Also follow-ups with Harpist. If you're doing an OTK deck, can I OTK this turn? Will that hand make me OTK, And this hand will not help me stun. I mean, it'll help me stun a little bit, but... one more thing, I like hand traps a lot more than normal traps. So if we're drawing to a hand trap, that makes the hand a little bit better to me. But in all honesty, this hand is beyond terrible, especially if you're going first. So let's put that in the bad section. So that's just what you keep doing. You keep looking at your hands. You see what's important to you, and stuff. This is obviously a bad hand. You have 2 hand traps. to Hysteric Party and a warning. You stun your opponent, you got no board, so you guys understanding, opening up with Max C going first is not good. So you start noticing what is making you dead draw. Like in this build, I actually cut Hysteric Party from 3 to 2, and I hate doing that. I love Hysteric Party. But one thing I noticed, and this is a great example of it, is that if you draw into it, or at least multiples of it for going first, which is kind of what Harpies want to do, going first, if you draw into multiple of these, you can't really do anything, you know? So that's kind of the thing, like, you have to gauge what's you want to see. And these aren't even stun cards, they're more of an OTK kind of thing, which kind of goes against your deck, but mid to late game, this is an OTK card. But I cut it from 3 to 2, why? Because draw multiple sucks, and if you open with it, it's kind of terrible, you know? Max C is a good card, but if you're going second, so that's why you can consider, like, cutting the Max C for cards that, you know, help your consistency, like, more Harpies, I guess. But yeah, this is another bad hand. And once again, I don't want to say this is a deck profile, because it obviously isn't. I'm just showing you guys how to tell if it's a good hand or a bad hand. Obviously, you need to shuffle a little bit more. This is actually a pretty decent hand. Devil Vermilio is terrible, though. But the cool thing is you got these 3 cards. You have a Harpy and a way to get Egotist. And you got Pot of Duality. Duality plus Vermilio is actually really good, because normally if you have any more back row, you can just normal summon a Vermilio, search a trap hole, and then Pod Duality into hopefully another trap. But Pod Duality is something I'm testing out. It's just a very iffy card. There are cards like this, and these are basically your draw engine cards and or search cards. Pod Duality is kind of a little bit both. These cards you have to take into account, but you always have to assume you get the average with this. You know, like, you can't say, like, oh, I draw into exactly what I needed, or I drew into a terrible card. You have to assume this is basically just a card that could help you and also hurt you at the same time. It's like a coin flip card. It's kind of hard to explain, but normally I would search for another trap, so, you know, trap Vermilio. So you got one play over here. Plus you got the Harpist with Hysteric Sign, Activate, Search Egotist, Normal Summon, Egotist, go into Rafflesia, you know. I mean, that's something, but you can't really stun your opponent with one stun card, but you also drew into another Vermilio, so that's kind of a dead card. You don't want to summon him. You typically only get one search, but the one thing I do like about Vermilio is that he makes all your bad hands better, but if you draw to multiples, it sucks. But I'm going to play 2 anyway, so this is a decent hand. It's not bad, definitely, but it definitely could be better. And then you start noticing what cards make your hands good and what's bad. Like, I'm just showing you guys real quick. I'm going to go through it a bit faster. This is okay, I guess, but since you open up with both your Egotist targets, only run 2 or 3. I think, let's just say I run 2, and your Egotist, this isn't as powerful, because typically you want to special some of these guys from deck, so it's just, you know, you can special them from hand too, so it's not really dead, it's just preferred, but since you have the Swallow Flip, or Nest, you could normal summon her, Swallow Flip into Chandler discard, but then your Egotist will be dead, you know, you could Egotist into, when you, normal summon her and Swallows Flip her into a Chandler, you can Egotist into her out, but what's the difference, you know? You have no more targets, and you don't have Harpist. You can make a rank 4, but you don't have no follow-up play, because typically with Chandler you want to go into Harpist. But you understand, this is an okay hand, it could be better, but for the most part, I'm going to say this is a bad hand, alright? You know, and then you start doing stuff, let's just say this is a good hand, well, yeah, just say it's a good hand, just so I can gauge it out with you, and this is going to be a bad hand. Yeah. So, after you went through all your test hands, you start gauging what makes a good hand, what makes a bad hand. Like, for example, this is our good hand. It's a terrible example, but we'll roll with it. And what makes a bad hand? What's a good example? Yeah, this one. So what you're going to do with this is see what makes this hand good and what makes this hand bad. Alright, and this can be done with any deck, but what makes this hand good? Well, I have a play, and I have backrow to help me. In this hand, do I have a play? No. Do I have backrow to protect me? You can argue the warning and Max C are, but if you're going first, what is Max C really going to do for you? Warning is good for what it is, but, you know, obviously. But you have 2 dead cards. You basically have to have your opponent special summon so you can get those draws, but if you stop the special summon with warning, you don't get the draw, you know, and that's why, you know, that's kind of a bad hand, because you have no plays. That's why I emphasize plays over everything else, no matter what deck you're playing. Always look at the plays. If you can make a play, that means it's at least a moderate hand, you know? And you can, it depends on the deck, obviously. If you're playing Nurse Burn, it depends. Exodia, you know, Troll decks, every deck is different. Just look at what keeps making your hands good and what keeps making your hands bad. Oh, I keep drawing to hand traps. Most of my bad hands included, you know, hand traps, you know. Or if most of my good hands had, you know, more Milios in it, you know. But some of them had hand traps too, you know, but which had more, you know. So I had a lot of bad hands, so typically you want to see what you want to gauge with that. And then you just keep rinsing and repeating. So then you put everything back into your deck and you start shuffling, rinse, repeat, and do it as many times as you want. And then you start seeing, like, you start noticing the patterns and what cards are, you know, good for your deck and which ones aren't, you know. And it just depends. 2, 3. So then you start doing the test hands again. This is an okay hand. I mean, you drew into a Harpy with Egotist, which is good. You have one of your Egotist targets, which isn't bad, but you have one in deck. You can even discard her into, like, Harpist, and then Egotist into another one, and you make Phantasmal and protect it, but Torrential isn't going to help as much, but if you have Rafflesia, though, it depends what you go into. So you can Harpy Chandler, Egotist her out, or, you know, stuff like that. Ideally, you probably use her, discard her to get Harpist, make Rafflesia, and then set the Torrential. Because Rafflesia isn't affected by traps while it has material, so you can just Torrential nuke everything your opponent has, and your Rafflesia stays. So that's pretty good, unless you have the one MST or Twin Twister. That's why, in this scenario, I would probably just set him, the Torrential, instead of the party. Because Twin Twister is running around. That's just something you just have to consider, you know? Is the good hands, those are the bad. And you just keep doing it with your deck. See, what cards are helping, what cards aren't. And one thing I'm noticing is, hey, I keep drawing to Swallow's Nest, but I have nothing to use it with. Like, every bad hand I had was Swallow's Nest, and that's consistently, so probably I should start cutting the Swallow's Nest, or make it more consistent by adding more Harpies, you know, and then you test both theories out. And, Hysteric Party, every time I have a bad hand, I draw into Hysteric Party, you know, first turn. So maybe I should start cutting that, you know. And, you know, this is something you just have to consider, you know. I have no monsters in this hand. How to make plays with monsters, so maybe I should add more, and if I add more, it's probably more consistent. You know, there's a lot of things you have to consider when you're doing the test hand phase. You can do this with all your decks. It's okay. Typically, I want to draw Mamilio with back row because normal summon, blah blah blah. But you still have you still have the Chandler with something to discard. You have Hysteric Sign to get Egotist. So typically, before I do discard, I do get the Egotist off. So even if I do Breakthrough Skill her, at least have another rank 4. But it's an okay hand. You got a board, but you can't, you know. No backup plays. Well, if Harpist goes to grave and you got traps, but you have no traps to protect you, you know. This time I have too many traps, maybe we should cut them, you know. Just, there's a lot of things you could do with this. Comment down below what you guys think, how you do your test hands, any ways to improve test hands, or what cards you want to look for in your opening hands, no matter what deck you're playing, so you know if it's like just good or not. So yeah, I hope this helped you guys at least a little bit. This is at least how I do it. I probably should do more stuff like this, how to make people better at Yu-Gi-Oh, sort of, or at least how I do things. So yeah, comment down below what you guys think of this. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. See you guys!